Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, and welcome to you. Howdy. How you doing? Shalom. Hey, I should only hope. It's July 26th, apropos of nothing. It's just something I tend to do at the beginning of the show, placing us in some measure of time. I got to tell you, my head's spinning right now because I just watched something that one of you sent me, Milton. And yeah, it was Fox News. It was a clip from Fox News. And Milton sent it because Susan and I yesterday had been speaking about the extraordinary absurdity of these new teaching guidelines in Florida that suggest that that Black people, in some measure, benefited from being considered merchandise as opposed to human beings. That they actually learned useful skills in slavery. This insane. I mean, we really, at some point, we should dig deeper into this. What purpose is served, and why would people in a position to who are seeking votes like DeSantis of American people, what do they think is in it for them to engage in this attempt to remake what we all, know to be an extraordinary horror? What? Okay, I'll stop because I can't. You can tell that I'm just like that term we like gobsmacked is. Anyway, so there was a woman on Fox who I don't know what her name was, and she identified herself as a Jew, and she was dared, I guess, on Fox to criticize these Florida guidelines about slavery being, not so bad. To some people, they benefited. Yeah. And so she said, my gosh, she said, it's like telling a Jew that that the Holocaust was good for them, that they learned the value of hard work. And then this jerk, Greg Gutfeld, who, with a name like that, I'm going to suggest has some Jew in him as well. That sure sounds like a Jewish name to me. Actually says, well, have you ever read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning? Because in it, he suggests, and I don't know if he went on to say that Viktor Frankl had been in a concentration camp, but he says that the Jews who made themselves useful, who had could survive. I don't even, I saw it and I still can't even take in what he said, because in any human being who values reality and truth, the cognitive dissonance actually makes you turn into the blithering blah, 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 that I am right now. That means like you can't even take it in. And by the way, I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I am holding it in my hands because when I just saw that, I turned around. It's sitting actually no more than 2 feet from me. And I pulled it off my bookshelf because Man's Search for Meaning is a book that blows your mind because it's written by a guy who spent 3 years in concentration camps, including Auschwitz, as his entire family is murdered, wiped out, and he finds meaning. This is his survival instinct. And he was a psychiatrist. And this man is mind-blowing, but he sure as hell did not suggest anything of the sort that this SOB Gutfeld put out to his credulous, constantly uninformed, ill-informed, misinformed Fox viewers. God. I was just like thumbing through it right before, as the show started. I was thumbing through it, and I saw that there was a page that I dog-eared, and I thought, what is on this page? And there are things like, just things like, he says, this is actually Viktor Frankl's words. There were always choices to make. He's talking about being in hell, being deprived of all that a human being requires, being starved, in constant fear, being worked to death. No liberty, no freedom, although Frankl says, yet, even then, his whole thing is they cannot enslave your mind. That's what I got from it. And that is for the black slaves or the Jews in the horror of the Holocaust. They can do what they do to your bodies, but they can never, ever take your mind. And that's, that it runs throughout the book. There were always choices to make. Every day, every hour. Make a decision which determined whether you would or would not submit the powers which threatened to rob you of your very self, of your inner freedom. And so he actually maintained that, I can't imagine, that even in that horror, you could retain the freedom of your mind and your innate human dignity. A few more words that he actually did say. The way in which a person accepts their fate and all the suffering it entails. The way in which they take up the cross gives them ample opportunity, even under the most difficult circumstances, to add a deeper meaning to their life. There's no way to pull little things out of here and not let him nuance it. But it's just, this whole thing, slavery. What? This is what the Republicans have come to. Slavery wasn't so bad. The Holocaust, if you were a useful Jew, you had a pretty good shot. So I guess 6 million plus of all those Jews, they didn't perform their useful work? Well, that's true, because some of them were taken right off the cattle cars, right in to be gassed. The Germans actually did not extract usefulness from many of them. They just friggin' killed them. When you end up, as the Republican Party has, in a place where you are attempting to make these arguments, you're finished. You're done. You're done. And I was thinking, you know that show I like, that Finding Your Roots show. Well, I watched again last night, and the two people that they were doing, where they look back and try to find their forebears, were Queen Latifah and Jeffrey Wright. And every time they do blacks and Jews on the show, you are reminded of how blacks and Jews have something in common. And it's not something you would wish. Blacks and Jews, historically, have suffered the fate of being targeted as subhuman and have had the powers that be, white Christians mostly, erase their histories, erase them so that they literally don't exist in the historical record. So when you're doing, if you're a white Christian and you're doing your family tree, the odds are, if you put your nose to the wheel, you can, go back to, God knows when, your thousands of years, perhaps. A black person, black American, lucky if they can get past 1860, because all their ancestors on the other side of that, mostly, were not considered human. They didn't end up in the census. They had no names. They were property. They were like, I own 2 houses, this many acres, this many slaves, this many chairs. They're things. And the reason Jews generally cannot get very far back is also the Holocaust. Because in the Holocaust, the Nazis and their eager allies in so many of the European countries destroyed all historical records. They burned the synagogues where records may have been. They destroyed everything. So again, it hit me last night as I was watching and having yesterday talked, about this effort to say slavery. Well, on the one hand and then on the other hand, and then you see Fox News doubling down and deciding they could say the same for the Holocaust. Well, okay. This is genocide. This is the meaning of genocide. What the slave owners tried to do to the Africans they brought over. Wiping out, eradicating their identities. That's a kind of genocide. And in the Holocaust with the Jews, it took even one more step. We'll take their freedom, we'll work them to death. Jews became slave labor, and then we'll just kill them once their usefulness is gone. And this is not like this happened. I was born a few years after that horror ended. A few little years. It ain't ancient history. So I can't, again, watching that show last night, I thought, geez, any effort to minimize what happened in those historical instances, in those horrific historical realities, any effort to somehow ameliorate or brush off the more horrific aspects. You can't. You have to own it. You have to take it. You have to accept it. You wonder what the DeSantises of the world, you wonder what they think of human beings. How weak they must think humans are. Incapable of handling the truth. And it is true. We have found that there are an awful lot of them who seem to, given a choice, they'll easily run from the truth. But I will tell you, it ain't all of us. And in fact, in this country, at this time, it ain't most of us. It's okay. I actually have some, I thought I knew what I was going to talk about today. And then this morning when I was pawing through certain papers, and the pawing doesn't work anymore because I'm mostly on the damn internet. But I prefer to paw. I prefer to have physical paper in front of me. I want to note, because it's odd, because just the day before yesterday, I had seen a picture that struck me because it was of a happy family and these beautiful smiling faces looking at me. And the caption told me, that it was LeBron James and his wife and children. And I was looking at that family group, and it was, and I was reminded, because I'd read somewhere before about his son, Bronny, LeBron Jr., I'm sure. And there was something so wonderful about that picture. And I remember sort of having this good feeling from seeing it and thinking, how amazing that LeBron James, who, has created what he's created, and clearly he's a strong family man, a strong family, and a successful, all this. I just thought that you just feel good. It feels good. And then to hear, whoa, that beautiful young boy, cardiac arrest. And then I read this today. This is mind-blowing. This is going to have some numbers in it, but listen to this. The survival rate, because he's okay. He was resuscitated. He is ICU, then released ICU, stable condition. He's an 18-year-old man. The survival rate for those who suffer cardiac arrest and receive CPR from a bystander is just a little over 11%. Whoa. Okay. Your heart stops. If you got somebody right there who starts doing CPR on you, the odds are way against your survival. If you're really lucky and you suffer cardiac arrest and there's a defibrillator right there, which generally is not the case, and you receive immediate defibrillation, that survival rate rises to 41%. So here again, it shows how what happened with Damar Hamlin truly was miraculous. And what happened, Bronny James surviving yesterday, really miraculous. Because 40%, would you take those odds? I thought it would be like 80% if there's a defibrillator there. No, just 40. Get this. Only 8% of cardiac arrest survivors emerge with a good neurological outcome. Only 8% of cardiac arrest survivors emerge with a good neurological outcome. Most have some degree of brain injury. Now, that's on the negative side. On the other positive side, this article points out that young athletes, this happens, high school athletes, college athletes, a basketball star at Florida State, I believe, Keontae Johnson, he went into cardiac arrest during a game 3 years ago. Obviously, defibrillator there. And this should give the James family some measure of hope. He was drafted in the second round by Oklahoma City, and he's now in the NBA. But here's the thing that's mind-blowing about this. Black male college basketball players, exactly what Keontae Johnson and Bronny James are, have a higher risk of sudden cardiac death than any other group of players. And they don't know why. Black male college basketball players have a higher risk of exactly this happening than any other group of players. The annual risk, get this, I mean, this is mind-blowing. The annual risk of sudden cardiac death in a black Division I basketball player is 1 in 5,000, okay? In Division I, you're a black kid, and you got a 1 in 5,000 chance of death, cardiac arrest. You know what it is for a white player? Division I basketball, white, 1 in 16,000. Why would that be? They have not found, the researchers who are trying to figure this, they cannot find an explanation. They say we see it again and again, not just in NCAA players, but high school players as well. Like young black men don't have enough crap. Well, anyway, I just wanted to point that out because that's mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing. I wish that kid well. I also want to say DeMar Hamlin, that beautiful smile of his and that extraordinary miracle and story. I am reading that the good fairy tale story might be about to end, and that the Buffalo Bills might cut him. That was not happy news either. Okay, time for a quick obit since we're on sports. Johnny Lujack, ladies and gentlemen. Now, that's a name I guess I would not be expected to necessarily know because he played college football before I was born. And then he played for the Bears when I was just a little girl. But you see, if you play for the Bears when I'm just a little girl, that's where I know that name, Lujack, because the Packers and the Bears had this, storied. And so I know those Chicago Bears from even though I was born in 48, I believe me, grew up knowing about Johnny Lujack and Sid Luckman and Bobby Lane. Now, that's ancient history, but I know those names. Anyway, I didn't know he's from Connellsville. The reason I know all this is, of course, he's dead. He just died. Lived a long life, 98. He born and raised in Connellsville, a star at Connellsville High School in every sport you can imagine. And also says here, the when I was born, January of 48, it says that's when the Bears signed Lou Jack. He'd been a huge star at Notre Dame. Huge, huge, huge. He was known. He was just one of those players that becomes like the guy. So the Bears signed him, and it says they signed him for a total of $80,000. And it's this next parenthetical thing that freaked me out, because it says what $80,000 was equivalent to in today's money. What do you think? 80,000, 1948. A little more than $1 million. Whoa! Talk about inflation. 80,000 the year I was born would be worth, it's the equivalent of over $1 million. So anyway, the only other thing that I have to share is that the New York Times obit on Johnny Lou Jack ends with a quote from a guy I knew and loved, and a great, great character, now gone as well. He was an analyst for ESPN. He knew more about college sports than anybody in the world. And not just that, he was funny as hell. A great character. Beano Cook was his name. You can't make up half the stories you hear about Beano. But the New York Times obit on Johnny Lou Jack ends with a Beanoism. I love it. I'll read it. I wish I could do Beano's voice. Just this wonderful voice. Oh my God. Okay, so here it is. Quote, the two greatest winners of the 1940s, FDR and John Lou Jack, Beano Cook said. But even Roosevelt won only 2 elections in the 40s, while Lou Jack won 3 national titles. So that's Beano Cook comparing Lou Jack of Connellsville, PA to FDR. Oh, God. And FDR comes out on the bottom. Too funny. Okay. I can't even do this story. Barbara just sent me this. Believe me, I'm aware of it. I haven't read much because this is one of those stories that I can't. And I suppose, again, we're talking about the capacity of some humans, the cruelty, the ability to dehumanize other humans. It's what Barbara sent me was a piece about Governor Abbott in Texas telling Texas troopers to push children who were trying to get across the Rio Grande and come to a place where they thought they might have a better life or a shot at a better life. Abbott told them to push them back into the water. Children. You know this. And to not give them, if they make it, to deny them water to drink. Well, no. I just, you can't, you reach a point where you just can't take it in. I mean, I do. Where a headline is all I can handle. Okay, so here's this other thing, and this is not horrible. This is just mind blowing, and I came upon it again this morning, and it's again from the New York Times, but it's about listen to this, because you can't make this stuff up. It's about a woman named Laura, I don't know how to pronounce it, Love Hardin. And I'm just going to give you just a little snippet of her biography. November 2008, California. She is handcuffed and yanked out the front door of her house by a sheriff's deputy who says to her, "You don't deserve to be a mother." What she sees as she's being yanked out of her front door are all her neighbors staring, mouths agape, about 10 other sheriff's cars. It looked like a major bust, and what it was her. And this is in a middle-class cul-de-sac in a nice neighborhood. And it says here that at that moment, pretty much, she lost everything. She lost her freedom. She lost her 4 sons, aged 3, 13, 16, and 17, and a toddler who was put in emergency foster care. She had owned a pet cemetery. She did time. She was a heroin addict. She stole people's identities. She stole their money. Actually, a lot of those neighbors who were looking on, whose kids played with her kids, and who were friendly with her, she had stolen checkbooks, credit cards, gift cards, painkillers from their homes. She had pirated their Wi-Fi. She had taken Social Security numbers, and all to feed her habit. But it's the rest of the story that's so mind-boggling. Because you know what she's doing now? Well, first of all, she got a book coming out called The Many Lives of Mama Love. Simon & Schuster's bringing it out. But this isn't the first time that she's dealt with the publishing industry, this former pet cemetery mother of 5, convicted felon. She's 56 now. No, it turns out that this same woman, after serving her time, was the ghostwriter for Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. What? You can't make this up. You can't make it up. Which is why she wrote a book. And, you know, she said, this is the kind of book that if you sent this true story off to a publisher, they'd say, well, this is just too unrealistic. I mean, give me a break. Is that not astonishing? She pled guilty to 32 felonies. She lucked out because she did not serve a ton of time. She could have faced 27 years. I'm not quite sure that they'll go into how she managed to get out a lot sooner than that. And the same week she got out, while she was in prison, she started writing. That's when she found she had a ability to write. But when she got out and started trying to find work, she found that it was really, really, really hard if you're a convicted felon to have anybody hire you. You can't get work. And she told herself if she ever, if they asked her, she'd tell the truth. But if somehow they didn't ask, have you ever been in, she wouldn't volunteer it. And so that's how she landed a job, part-time job, as an assistant at a literary agency. And the guy who founded that and who had hired her represented Nelson Mandela and Benjamin Tutu. And he never checked her references or asked her if she'd been in jail. He said he could tell she'd been through some stuff. But telling a friend about this woman that he'd hired, this guy's name is Doug Abrams, by the way, the guy who represented Mandela and Tutu. He said, he tells it, I just hired this woman. She's, whatever. And the friend said, well, guy, at least Google her. I mean, just see what you can find out. And what he found was an article in the Santa Cruz Sentinel, which described her as the neighbor from hell. Obviously said by one of the neighbors whose identity she had absconded with. So this Abrams guy, the literary agent, says, geez, here's somebody I've just hired to do the banking and the accounting. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So what does he do? This is odd too. I find people so fascinating. What would you do? Yeah. Well, I would say that the vast majority of people would tell her that they had made a mistake and there was no job. That's not what he did. Instead, he looked further into her past and ended up calling the woman in charge of the reentry program that she had been in as she left prison and went into the world again. And he says to this woman, can you guarantee that she's not going to relapse? And the woman said, of course I can't. But what I can tell you is, unlike a lot of people off the street, she has so much more to lose. And I really don't even know what that means. But this Abrams guy actually is still mulling over whether to keep her on. And then he said after a dark night of the soul, he decided, I'll give her a shot. And he says it's one of the best decisions he ever made. She eventually became co-chief executive. And he said that her ability to do the identity theft crimes was because she was able so easily to assume other identities. And so she was a perfect ghostwriter. She could get somebody's voice, he said. She could get their mind, soul onto the page in a really powerful way. How amazing is that? Laura Love Hardin. She's now a literary agent herself, a former convict, identity thief, and heroin addict. I love that story. Okay, so I can't believe that the Bowers trial, they're in the sentencing phase, or they're going to try to figure out whether to kill the son of a bitch or feed him and shelter him till he dies of natural causes. His defense, I mean, what the people defending him are now asking the court to have Bowers' father's body dug up from its grave. Okay, why? Well, maybe you already know. Here's what they're trying to prove that the father committed suicide when Bowers was 7. So, I mean, that guy's been dead some time. And they want to try to extract DNA from the bones to prove that he is, in fact, Bowers' father. Because there's some folks saying that Bowers' mother was getting around some in those days, and it's unclear whether that's his biological father. The defense is hoping to hell that he is the biological father because he was determined to have schizophrenia, and schizophrenia can run in families, and they're trying to show that he is mentally ill. The judge has yet to rule on this. God, thank God I'm not a judge. Good God in heaven. I just want to say, I so feel for the members of this jury. I so feel for them. Because in doing this duty that could befall any of us as citizens, they are, in our stead, attempting to determine what is just in this particular horrific mass murder. And they have had to sit through testimony that I cannot imagine. And so I am saying that every single one of them, I sure as hell hope, will, at taxpayer expense, be given some psychiatric counseling afterwards to deal with the horrors that they have endured. By looking at the photos of the dead bodies, by listening to the stories of the families, so that those dead bodies were real people to them. To see these smiling, happy pictures of grandparents and parents, and then to see their bullet-riddled, shattered, bloody bodies. I can't imagine. And it's been week after week after week after week. Think about it. Really something. It's really something. And I hope to God that they'll all be okay. I'm sure some will, and I'm pretty sure some won't. For those more empathetic, more sensitive souls, I mean, this could have just a devastating impact. Well, I want to talk about the fact that what is it? Oh, get lost. My clock isn't in your fucking clock. Excuse me. I can't get to this. That's too bad. This has to do with the fact that yet another person has died in the custody of Allegheny County, specifically at its jail. And I've lost track of the number, and that's what I don't have. It's unbelievable. You go in there, and the odds of coming out dead are more so than almost any other jail in the country. What the hell is going on? This latest one is a guy who was in there. So I think I can get some of this information. He was in there for shoplifting, essentially, I guess. It was Brentwood police that picked him up, and he was charged, not convicted. Remember, innocent till proven guilty. This guy had not been convicted. He was charged with theft by unlawful taking and retail theft. Isn't that the same thing? Why do they do this? Sort of pile on the same thing. Disorderly conduct and criminal mischief. I don't know. That was back in January, guys. What were you in now? July? So in January, this hapless soul gets picked up and charged, not with a violent crime, and he's brought before a judge. He was picked up on January 10th. He's brought before a judge on January 11th, and the judge sets his bail at $2,000. I could pay that. A lot of you could scrape it up, right? $2,000, get out of jail, not free, but $2,000. That's doable, right? Not for this hapless soul. So let me explain that this guy, like so many of the people in that jail, I can't even look at it when I drive past it. It makes me sick to think of the souls in there. He's convicted of nothing. even if he did these crimes, theft, he was not in possession of a weapon. He was not a threat to another person's life. He didn't have $2,000 to get out of jail and go home and wait for his trial like most of us would. He was in jail because he was poor. Because he didn't have access to $2,000. So when you hear people talking about bail reform, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the fact that almost every person in that jail has not been convicted of the crime that they're sitting there for. They can't make bail. They also found out that this guy is a little not right in the head. And so he was in the so-called mental health unit, I hate to think, awaiting to be transferred to a state hospital, I guess the one that takes in people like this. And there's a waiting list. He had no shot of getting there. Anyway, none of that matters. He's in there for 6 months, convicted of nothing. His crime is he's mentally ill and poor. Now he's dead. And that's okay? No, of course it's not. But why isn't this a bigger issue? There are people trying very hard to get our attention about this. They're dropping dead over there. And they wouldn't be there if they weren't poor and if they weren't denied health care, because that's what mental health care is. It's health care. But in this country, not so much. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm sorry. I can't go on after that. It's too upsetting to me. It's just too upsetting. So I think I'm calling it a day. We're a minute away from the end of the show, but who's counting? Huh? Just asking. So I think that's it. I'm out of here, and my intent is to be back here tomorrow. Okay, so stay cool and have a good day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.